Good afternoon. This week, I'm going to talk about my favorite king from the Old Testament, Hezekiah, king of Judah. He was a man of faith who faced great adversity. As I described in my sermon yesterday, while Hezekiah was king, the army of the mighty Assyrian Empire attacked his kingdom and laid siege to the capital city of Jerusalem. Hezekiah, as I said, being a man of faith, responded first by turning to the Lord when he was facing this crisis. And the Lord, in response, sent Hezekiah a message through the prophet Isaiah. And we find Isaiah's oracle in chapter 37 of his book. Through Isaiah, the Lord told Hezekiah that appearances are deceiving. By human standards, by the way we normally look at things, Jerusalem was doomed. This was a powerful army that easily conquered lands and cities, just like Jerusalem. And now they were at the gates of the city. The Assyrians offered terms of surrender to Hezekiah because it was obvious to everyone that it was only a matter of time before Jerusalem would be overcome. That's the way things appeared by human standards. But things looked completely different by God's standards. As God saw the situation, the size of the army is meaningless. What matters is the state of the heart. The Assyrian general and the Assyrian emperor mocked the Lord. They made fun of him. They equated the Lord to the pagan idols that the other nations worshipped. They said it was folly for Hezekiah to trust in the Lord. They were boastful and arrogant. They believed that they were unstoppable. Hezekiah's mindset was very different. As I said, he turned immediately to the Lord when the crisis arose. And we know that the Lord always receives those who turn to him. That's what Jesus himself said. In John chapter 6, we read Jesus saying, "All those the Father gives to me will come to me, and whoever comes to me, I will never drive away." Think of that. Whoever comes to Jesus will never be driven away. Whoever turns to the Lord will never be driven away. That is what matters more than the way things appear. Hezekiah put the Lord's glory ahead of his own self-interest. He sought for the Lord to act in the midst of this threat from this army, but he didn't ask it for his own sake. He asked it for the Lord's sake, for the Lord to avenge the way these Assyrian leaders were mocking him. Appearances are deceiving. Those who appear to be weak may be strong because they are under the Lord's protection and he will never drive them away. We, when we're in this situation, can act with confidence in the face of peril. The way Isaiah words it, we can even scoff at those who oppose us or try to threaten us. And on the other hand, those who appear to be mighty will be undone if they rely on their own might, if they put their confidence in themselves, if they boast about themselves rather than turning to God. Historians tell us that it was a fluke that Sennacherib, the Assyrian emperor, abandoned his siege of Jerusalem. He did so because he heard that there was an attempted coup back in this capital. So he went back home to face that coup. And when he was there, he was assassinated by his own sons. This appears to be what you could call a coincidence. It just happened to be the case that the emperor went back home before he finished leveling the city of Jerusalem. It was coincidence that spared Jerusalem from destruction. But again, appearances are deceiving. What appears to be simply a coincidence is actually God at work. And that's something else for us to pay attention to. Look at the coincidences that happen in your life. Sometimes they're called serendipities. when something just happens in a surprising, unusual way, or two things come together in a way you would never expect. Often, this is how God shows his hand at work in the world. This is an indication of how he is working events in our lives toward his will. Isaiah's oracle went on. He went on to provide God's promise for the future of the kingdom after the Assyrians had left. The land had been devastated by warfare. The fields and the flocks were ruined. The farmers were preoccupied simply with staying alive. They had no energy or time or opportunity to take care of their crops or their herds. And bear in mind, Judah was primarily an agricultural society. It was the farms that were the mainstay of the land. So Isaiah said, for the next 2 years, the land will just naturally produce a harvest that will be enough to feed everyone. Those are what we typically call volunteer crops these days. Crops or plants that will arise not because you planted them, but because the seeds happen to be there, maybe left over from last year. But these volunteer crops will be enough to sustain the people for 2 years. And then in the 3rd year, that is when the farmers will be able to sow and harvest, and the land will be fruitful again. Isaiah told Hezekiah that the condition of the nation would be the same as the condition of agriculture. The kingdom would take root and bear fruit. The kingdom would flourish. But Isaiah's message had a double meaning. What he said was, once more a remnant of the kingdom of Judah will take root below and bear fruit above. Notice he said, a remnant of the kingdom will take root and bear fruit. That means the whole will be lost. Only a remnant will be left over. The nation will be devastated. But on the other hand, notice it will be a remnant. Not all is lost. The glass is either half full or half empty. It all depends on how you look at it. Would you join me in prayer? Lord, help us to trust the way you show the world to us, not the way that the world appears to us. Help us to trust that when we place ourselves in your care, that is what matters more than any resources or any threats we may face. Help us to trust in you more and more. Help us to turn to you, confident that you will never drive us away. Amen. Thanks for joining me. We'll talk again later.